Welcome, crew, guys, gals, ghouls, friends, fiends, and foes, as well as otherworldly beings. Let's climb aboard the mothership, secure our tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. I'm your ghostess with the mostest, TessaTNT, and we are broadcasting live from the Mile High Clubhouse tonight. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, and welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. It is an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to have you hanging out with me on the airwaves tonight. If you want to listen in your free time, whether you're working it, or working out, you can listen to me on Spreaker.com and wherever else you listen to your broadcasts and podcasts. So tonight we are doing story time with me, TessaTNT. It's pretty crazy in the area right now. We have all kinds of evacuations going on, flooding. The levee was not broken, but it was broached, like the water is going over it or whatnot. So yeah, it's causing all kinds of issues. I'm putting positive energy, thoughts and prayers out to all the families up there. Luckily, they're opening up the high school, so people have a place to stay. The casino is giving rooms for $145, and that's not including the resort fee. So no resort fee, but $145. I'm like, come on, make it $45 at the most, and take a cut on your taxes with the other $100. Because man, even $45 in a situation like this is very tight. At least for people like me, but yeah, I'm hoping everything goes well for everyone, and it's just horrible when your home gets damaged, whether it's from flood or the roof collapsing because the weight of the snow, or we even have fires, taking homes. It's pretty sad. So if you would, go ahead and put some energy out there for them as well. This is supposed to be going on for several days. Then there's supposed to be a day break, and then it's going to go on for even longer, and it's going to be actually 20 degrees cooler the next time it hits next week for the second round. So that ought to be fun. Cold is cool. Just kidding. It's really going to suck. My chicken coop that I was building, I had a tarp on top of it. Summer and spring, it's fine. But I guess the rain weight on the tarp ripped it open. So now I need to actually put a roof on there. The people from my last security gig really dragged their feet on paying us this last time. But yeah, hopefully I'll get that done this week, because those poor chickens. But luckily, the only part of the coop that was exposed was the front part, so that's where the door is, and a little storage area, and it's kind of hitting the goose nest, but the girls don't really use it anyhow, so I might end up making that into another chicken coop, because the chickens need their nesting area. Anyways, enough about that. I hope your life is going great, and hopefully you're out of harm's way and doing well during this crazy time in life. All right, so tonight it is story time with me, TessaTNT, and we are going to get back into our book. The book is... where's the name of it? I know it's Colorado Legends. So it's called Forgotten Tales of Colorado, and it's been pretty good so far. The book that I also have on hold at the library, I had to order it, or get it on hold from another library, and it seemed like every paranormal or ghost book I was looking for at the library, they didn't have any on hand. All right. So the one on hold is called Apparition Manor, and it's True Ghost Stories of the Hotel Colorado. And yeah, it's going to be a really, really good book. I'm really looking forward to that. All right, let's get into our tales. Legends of both good and bad witches were popular in Colorado, and believe it or not, one woman was even persecuted for the crime, as headlines in the September 10th, 1899 issue of the Omaha World Herald shouted, "Colorado court convicts woman of being a witch." According to the article, a man had admitted to beating a woman whom he accused of being a witch. The woman went to court, and over a half a dozen men stepped forward as witnesses for the prosecution. Sorry, I had to grab my spectacles. Raven-haired seductress Catherine Rothenberg was described as being a beautiful Jewess who swayed men with her alluring Arabian charms and mystical Oriental spells. Rothenberg had established herself as a well-regarded soothsayer in Leadville, and folks came from all around the country to benefit from the Wicked Widow's magical powers. One of these people was Martin Roberts, who paid Catherine a king's ransom but demanded his money back when her prediction was wrong. Needless to say, sorceresses don't give refunds, and all hell broke loose when the Wicked Witch refused. The next day, Mrs. Roberts went to the sorceress's cabin and politely requested reimbursement, but the beautiful witch just mumbled a wicked incantation and slammed the door in her face. Within hours, everyone in the Roberts household fell deathly ill, blaming their misfortune on the witch. For several weeks, the family suffered from all kinds of maladies, but Mr. Roberts crept into Catherine's cottage. Okay, hold on one second. I'm always getting interrupted. I gotta find where I was. What the heck? Okay, well, that's weird, because I remember it leaving off somewhere else. Super weird. Okay, so let's start from... For several weeks, the family suffered from all kinds of maladies, but Mr. Roberts refused to beg mercy from the witchy woman. One day, Roberts recalled hearing the vamp tell him that her powers would be vanquished if blood ever spilled from her mouth. That night, Mr. Roberts crept into Catherine's cottage and smacked her on the face until blood was drawn. Alas, she admitted defeat but still refused to refund his money. During the spectacular trial, Sam Jones, the former Attorney General of Colorado, became quite incensed when the judge allowed testimony to prove that Catherine Rothenberg was a witch, shouting, "Great God! Is this case being tried in Colorado during the 19th century, or are we baiting witches in the 17th? I object to the court turning back the hands of time 200 years. Apparently, his grandstanding worked, and the case was dismissed. Legend holds that Catherine Rothenberg eventually left the mining camp for Denver, where practicing magic was better tolerated. Sugar Babe was an infamous witch who lived in an old Denver neighborhood called the Bottoms. The haggard 85-year-old voodoo queen was known to squat in an abandoned boarding house located on the corner of 19th and New Haven. The decrepit mansion once had rental rooms upstairs as well as an early saloon on the main level that was reputed to be haunted by numerous spirits. The ghosts were rumored to be those of 3 outlaws who died in a gunfight and 2 sisters rumored to be buried in the basement. The mansion's spooky reputation got plenty of unwanted attention when on June 17, 1920, headlines in the Denver Post screamed, "Body of man is found dangling from the 20th Street viaduct in front of a haunted building." The police assumed that the victim had committed suicide but couldn't be sure since the man didn't leave a note. Old Sugar Babe and her toothless cronies agreed that it was some kind of evil omen. The witches told reporters that the ghosts of the house were angry and demanded 3 human sacrifices to appease the spirits. Rumors were that the old boarding house was being demolished in the name of progress, and a vindictive Sugar Babe was quoted as saying, "There got to be 3 lives pay the price before the ghost will be content. That body they found Thursday is only the first one. There got to be 2 more now, murder or suicide, or the ghost won't rest. They've been mighty stirred up about the ruckus about their house." Patrolman William Baker was well aware that Sugar Babe's old mansion was haunted, and he used its spooky reputation to his great advantage. The policeman's ingenious idea quickly curtailed crime in the neighborhood and was written about in the Denver Post on June 13, 1920, with the following headlines. "Haunted house is quick cure for Jags. Patrolman proves those who hail from the bottoms becoming wary of imbibing too freely since Officer Baker discovered stunt that's better than jail." According to the police records, people living in the Bottoms neighborhood had a penchant for strong drink. Yet 3 weeks had gone by without a single drunk appearing in court. And it wasn't because of prohibition. The judge was surprised as hell to learn that the policeman had started punishing drunks by making them spend the night in the witch's haunted mansion. The officer was quoted as saying, "Everybody down there believes that the house is really haunted. I have warned the old regulars who were in a habit of acquiring a jag about once a week that if I found them drunk, I would lock them up in there, and believe me, most of them have stayed sober ever since. Several of them have gotten drunk and I locked them up there. 5 minutes later, they came out absolutely sober." Sugar Babe didn't mind a drunken bum squatting at the homestead now and then, but she was furious as hell when the city finally tore down the decrepit eyesore. The demolition squad was admittedly frightened by the intimidating witch, and when a stray mutt dug up a large bone in the basement, it really frazzled them. It was later determined that the dog's buried treasure was just a leg bone from a sheep. Still, other mysteries and mysterious bones were discovered sticking out of the stone foundation, leading to whispers of satanic worship. The lawmen quickly stifled rumors of human sacrifice by explaining that, back in the old days, ground cattle bones were often added to kitchen mortar. And to thicken mortar, needless to say, the workmen were relieved to know that they weren't toiled away in a devil's den. Whatever happened to Sugar Babe after her beloved haunted mansion was razed, nobody really knows, but some folks claim that the old witch ended up in mystical Manitou Springs. That would actually be a really good place for her. The mysterious vampire's grave is located in the northeastern section of Pauper's Field in the Lafayette Municipal Cemetery off US 287. For more information, please see www.fullmoonexplorations.com. For more information on Haunted Manitou Springs, please visit www.manitoulegends.com. Chapter 22, The Living Dead. I'm not afraid of death, I just don't want to be there when it happens. Woody Allen. Many of Colorado's mining hubs grew in some unsavory directions during their formative years, and things got even worse after the railroad came through. The mining camps were crawling with all sorts of shady characters, most of whom carried dangerous weapons. Saloons, gambling houses, and dance halls far outnumbered churches, and there were definitely more bad guys than good. Once these ruffians got to drinking, all hell would break loose. Needless to say, coffins were in big demand, and undertakers were almost as busy as saloon keepers. One gruesome story was particularly sad because it occurred just before Christmas. The Denver Post recapped the incident in May 1902 with a gruesome headline: Surreptitiously Sawed Off Head, Man's Skull. Surreptitiously sawed off dead man's skull. I was about to say, what the heck? The secret story of and acquittal of William Brooks for killing James Roberts in Cripple Creek last Christmas. Everyone at the Dawson Club considered James Robert to be thick-headed, but they soon learned otherwise. When the drunkard refused to leave the saloon, the bartender reprimanded him with a thump on the head, and the miner fell to the floor. Figuring that the drunk was playing possum, the revelers went along with the charade, pouring more beer down his throat and propping him in front of the player piano while they danced and sang Christmas carols. After an hour, they finally noticed the blood coming out of the maestro's ear and realized the party was over. Popular bartender was promptly arrested for murder, but all of his friends rallied behind him. One friend of the bartender was also the town's doctor, who sawed off James Roberts' head, examining it, and testified that the drunkard had an unusually thin skull, concluding that it was his own darn fault for dying from the thump. The testimony of the undertaker, coroner, and many witnesses helped exonerate the beloved bartender, and life went on as usual for everyone. Everyone but James Roberts, who was buried without the benefit of ceremony or a head. One of the most successful morticians in Teller County was Coroner Dunn, the esteemed president of the Western Association of Undertakers. Mr. Dunn owned the largest and finest undertaking parlor in Victor's Undertaker's Row and made quite a good living off the dead. Mr. Dunn lived upstairs with his wife and children, while the lower level of massive brick building was used for his business. Although he was not much of a family man, Mr. Dunn was certainly well respected in his field. The undertaker was well known for his understanding of forensics long before it became a reputable science. After a long, rewarding career, the Dunn building sat vacant for many years because people feared its haunted reputation. Finally, the old undertaker's parlor was converted into an apartment building. Yeah, right, I would not live there. Or would I? Despite the fresh paint and shiny new fixtures, most tenants didn't stay long, complaining of a tall, shadowy figure that haunted the building with heavy footsteps. Sometimes tenants would awake to feel an invisible force press down on their chest, unable to move or cry for help, and finger-shaped bruises around their necks served as proof of their claims. For a long time, folks were convinced that the malicious energy was the ghost of the undertaker, who even in death wanted to be working in his old digs. Mr. Dunn's former assistant, Mr. Jones, finally broke his conspiracy of silence and spilled the beans about the true identity of the ghost. However, if the dearly departed Mr. Dunn ever found out about the breach of trust, he would surely roll over in his grave. Jones testified that one time he was assisting Mr. Dunn in preparing the corpse of a mangled miner when the cadaver suddenly twitched on the embalming table. At first, the two men thought their eyes were playing tricks on them and went on with business. A few moments later, the stiff surprisingly came back to life, excitingly flailing his arms and gasping for breath. Mr. Dunn stepped back to collect his wits, and the corpse let out a blood-curdling howl before bolting upright on the slab. Incredibly, the befuddled dead guy swung off the table and tried to escape before running into the wall and falling flat on his face. No doubt the mangled miner lost his way because his eyeballs were floating in a nearby jar. In all of their years of professional experience, the two men had never encountered a living dead man. Thinking quickly, the maddened mortician hastily plunged a needle into the zombie's arm, causing him to pass out. Mr. Jones said he wanted to get the sheriff, but that the creepy undertaker stopped him dead in his tracks and sneered that they didn't need any help from the law. Mr. Jones watched in horror as the maddened doctor hastily stabbed a second dose of morphine into the miner's arm. But he was somewhat relieved when the monster heaved his last breath. Shortly after the mercy killing, all sorts of supernatural activity started happening in the building. Mr. Jones kept his macabre secret for many years because he was too afraid to come forward with the horrifying truth. Believe it or not, the strange experience was not the first time that a corpse resurrected itself in the Colorado mountain town. When an avalanche occurred on Homestake Mountain in 1883, a victim was taken to the composing room of the Leadville Chronicle. Relatives were called to claim her corpse, but before they arrived, the dead woman got up, brushed herself off, and walked right out the door without saying a word to anyone. Just a few decades later, yet another proclaimed dead guy came back to life in Gunnison. The amazing story was reported in the April 13, 1911 issue of the Rocky Mountain News with the following eerie headlines: The Festive Funeral, a story of how the corpse came back. Everyone in the county was terribly upset upon hearing that popular Sheriff Bowman had been killed by horse thieves in a nearby town, but his young widow was especially bestowed with grief. Denver's Bishop Spaulding, who just happened to be in town, dedicating a new chapel, agreed to stay a few days longer to perform the sheriff's burial service. The widow began planning an elaborate funeral, and the finest casket was ordered from a Denver funeral home. Mrs. Bowen put on her widow weeds, and her home was prepared to receive an onslaught of grieving guests, friends, neighbors, and fellow lawmen, all gathered at the sheriff's homestead, and those who could not squeeze inside waited outside, where it was raining cats and dogs. There was not a dry eye in the house. Even big burly mountain men were seen blubbering like overgrown babies. Mrs. Bowman became worried when the hearse was late and was about to cancel the engagement when the rain suddenly stopped, as if on cue. When the guests spotted the black funeral wagon coming, they walked to the road to greet the mournful entourage. When the hearse pulled up, Mrs. Bowman screamed and then promptly fainted in the bishop's arms. In the back of the wagon was the sheriff, sitting on top of his casket. Sheriff Bowman, grinning like a Cheshire cat, stood on top of his casket and deadpanned. "Shame to ruin such a swell funeral, but I refuse to be buried." First, a few people were enraged at the sheriff's preposterous joke, but all were soon relieved to see that beloved Sheriff Bowman was still alive and kicking after all. To see the skull of murder victim James Roberts, please visit the Cripple Creek District Museum. Some folks swear that the miner's skull is haunted, but don't let that silly rumor rattle your bones. You can contact the museum at 719-689-2634. Chapter 23: Cemeteries and Body Snatchers. Remember, friends, as you walk by, as you are now, so once was I. Just like me, you will someday be. So prepare yourself to follow into eternity. Cemetery epitaph. No one can argue that cemeteries are spooky places, but few people may be aware that Colorado has some of the most haunted cemeteries in the entire country. In Cannon City, the wooden markers of the so-called Pecker Hill graveyard were destroyed by woodpeckers long ago. The ravaged headstones were eventually replaced by metal markers made by prison inmates but have long since rusted. Buried here are the long-forgotten executed prisoners from the neighboring Colorado State Penitentiary. Psychics believe that quite a few lost souls still linger on Pecker Hill, tethered there by strong emotions of despair. Many of the prisoners were executed in torturous ways that are now illegal. Especially feared was the lethal water torture tank in which the floor would suddenly plunge and catapult the prisoner into the air and often decapitate him. What the heck? Death row inmate Edward Ives was executed not once, but twice. The convicted murderer shouted for joy when the rope snapped off the pulley, setting him free. Woohoo! Eddie thought he could pack his duds and skip home, but it wasn't meant to be. After a second Last Supper of beans and cornbread, he was strung up once again. But this time the executioner used industrial-strength rope. State records reveal how Eddie Ives struggled for 23 minutes before he was finally pronounced dead. Prisoners felt so sorry for Eddie's dumb luck that they all chipped in and bought him the only stone marker on Pecker Hill. Denver's Cheeseman is how they call it, but it's spelled like chess. Denver's Cheeseman Park is also well known for its paranormal activity. Historians will tell you that the beautifully landscaped park was once a city cemetery until urban renewal swept through and claimed the decrepit eyesore. Legend holds that residents were given only a few weeks to find new burial plots, so many graves were plowed over. Years later, it was discovered that an unscrupulous cemetery sexton had robbed graves as they were being relocated. Paranormal investigators suggest that because of his grave disrespect, Cheeseman is teeming with unsettled spirits. The beautifully manicured lawns and gardens of Cheeseman Park could be attributed to natural still fertilizer. Experts believe that there are at least 2,000 bodies still buried under what is now the Denver Botanical Gardens. At least they have flowers, I guess. The most haunted cemetery in Colorado lies just outside the old mining town of Silver Cliff. For years, old-timers claimed to have seen strange bluish lights in the ancient graveyard, but the mystery finally gained national attention on April 18, 1956, when the haunting headlines of New Jersey's Trenton Evening Times screamed, "Weird bluish lights seen in Colorado Cemetery." One night, over 50 witnesses went to the cemetery to observe the spectacular phenomenon. And not one of them was disappointed in the spectacular show. Some of the folks tried to catch the mysterious floating balls of energy, but were fooled when the light would evade them, only to reappear in another section of the forbidden graveyard, as if playing a game of hide-and-seek. One of the witnesses was quoted as saying, "The noticeable thing is that they hover about the tops of the tombstones, depending on how high the tombstones are. I've seen them on the ground and up to the head high." In 1968, Life magazine featured a full report on the mysterious lights, but its reporters were also at a loss to explain the bizarre occurrence. Residents of Silver Cliff and its Siamese twin town of West Cliff still claim to see the mysterious ghost lights, and the mystery remains unsolved to this very day. The most common reason that many ancient cemeteries were protected by tall wrought iron fences and guarded under lock and key was the fear of body snatchers. With the birth of modern medicine came a huge demand for human corpses. But doctoring the dead was unlawful, so corpses were often purchased by physicians at back alley doors of hospitals, prisons, mental institutions, and poor farms. Obviously, the demand was much higher than the supply, and so, a result, grave robbery became a necessary evil. Professional body snatchers became quite adept at pillaging cemeteries and plundering both fresh and long forgotten graves. Sometimes these scavengers were hunting for buried treasure, while other times corpses were sought for use in satanic rituals. Occasionally, thieves wanted a dead body for sentimental reasons, such as the case when an intense custody battle erupted over the corpse of a famous frontier showman, Buffalo Bill Cody. Cody wanted to be buried in his namesake town of Cody, Wyoming, but his worried widow had other plans. Mrs. Cody kept her hubby on ice for 6 long months until his corpse could be interred in a reinforced steel coffin and then secured under 10 tons of concrete. During the private funeral, the Colorado National Guard parked an armored tank nearby because the widow feared defiant relatives would actually kidnap the stiff and rebury it in Wyoming. Several truckloads of concrete were also poured over the grave of Pearl DeVere in Cripple Creek's Mount Pisgah Cemetery. The infamous madam had the most fashionable funeral the state had ever seen. The funeral entourage marched from Pearl's brothel all the way to the Mount Pisgah Cemetery, led by a 20-piece Elks band and mounted police escort. The 36-year-old red-headed beauty was buried in an exquisite $8,000 pink chiffon ball gown. Sadly, the beloved beauty had died from an accidental overdose the morning after a big shindig. Pearl would likely have been buried in paupers' field if it had not been for the generous donation from an anonymous suitor. Excuse me. The most infamous body snatchers of all time were a couple of misfits by the names of William Burke and William Hare of Edinburgh, Scotland. In 1828, the dynamic duo began murdering innocent people and selling the corpses to Britain's prestigious medical schools. Just 10 months later, the duo murdered a popular young street vendor who was recognized on the dissecting table by a local medical student. Legend holds that after the infamous execution, the angry townsfolk ripped the bodies of Burke and Hare limb from limb and then fashioned their dried flesh into souvenir wallets, headbands, and buttons. Ew. Colorado is home to a few infamous body snatching stories as well, and on one occasion, thieves plundering a cemetery near Denver got much more than they ever bargained for. The grave in question belonged to a wealthy old rancher who had apparently died of heart failure, not just once, but twice. It was said that the bachelor was buried wearing a fortune in gold. The next morning, an undertaker found 3 men lying dead inside the plundered grave. Blood was splattered on the inside of the coffin, and the old rancher's chest had been punctured. Investigators surmised that the robber's spade had breached the coffin and pierced the old man's heart. Sorry, guys. Scratch marks on the inside of the coffin lid validated the theory that the rancher was mistakenly buried while in a coma, awoke after burial, and then attempted to escape the dirt prison. The grave robbers obviously died of fright after hearing the panicked old man scream in agony, as the look of unimaginable fear was immortalized on their faces. When another nearby grave was robbed, the citizens of Denver were terrorized with fear. On November 2nd, 1902, headlines in the Denver Post lamented, "Gang of heartless ghouls robbing Denver's graves. Mutilated body found on the prairie is identified as that of Della Abbey, aged 13 months, buried on Saturday." Aw, man. Body snatching occurred all over the state, but seemed to be especially prevalent in isolated cemeteries in small villages such as Trinidad, where in 1890 a resident told a reporter that his dog had scampered into his kitchen one afternoon with a decayed foot of a child dangling out of its mouth. Authorities followed the muddy trail that led to the city's southern cemetery and found evidence that the fresh grave of a young boy had been violated. Police officers agreed that the grave was likely robbed by a satanic cult, and shocking headlines in the Denver Post terrified the town just before Christmas. Ghouls in Trinidad. The southern city is greatly excited about ghastly find by a policeman. It is supposed that a gang of grave robbers have established themselves there permanently. Private Doyle Cemetery, located just south of Pueblo, is one of the most forgotten graveyards in the state. Only a few members of the distinguished Doyle clan were buried there long ago, but now all that remains of the former Casablanca Ranch are a few neglected headstones. In 1987, the Colorado Springs Gazette featured a fascinating article about Edgar D. Barry, whose great-grandfather, Joseph Bainbridge Lafayette Doyle, was buried on the ranch. Years earlier, Mr. Barry had received a mysterious postcard from a Pueblo historian informing him that his great-grandfather was likely buried with over $1 million back in 1864. Genealogists claim that after Joseph Doyle died, his young wife Maria buried $1 million in gold inside his coffin, as requested in his will. Apparently, the old farmer did not trust banks and wanted, in death, to guard the fortune until his family needed it. Tragically, Maria died not long after her husband. The couple's 2 young daughters were sent to a convent, and over time the secret of Casablanca Ranch was forgotten. Mr. Barry surmised that the strange postcard was just a weird prank and left it at that. This would later prove to be a grave mistake. After Mr. Barry retired 20 years later, he began investigating his family history and was shocked to discover that there could be some truth behind the mystery. Sadly, when Mr. Barry finally arrived at the remote cemetery, he discovered that he had already been beaten to the treasure. One can only imagine what Mr. Barry was thinking when he tearfully gazed into the vacant grave, but it must have felt something like losing a winning lottery ticket. Perhaps the most infamous grave robbery in the state occurred in 1906 when a gang of thugs attempted to defraud the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company for thousands of dollars. The lark began when the bloodied, mangled corpse of a miner named John J. McEachern was found near the town of Victor's Mount, Straub. Sheriff Bell thought that something seemed fishy about the mining accident, and he grew even more suspicious when Mrs. McEachern refused to identify her husband's corpse. Conniving lawman later returned with a fictitious love letter addressed to her husband, and the widow went wild with jealousy. Mrs. McEachern suddenly blurted out that she was going to claw her husband's eyes out just as soon as she could get her hands on him. After letting the cat out of the bag, the duped woman was promptly arrested. Mrs. McEachern finally admitted to the conspiracy and unwittingly implicated her husband, along with 5 other miners. During the sensational trial, it was revealed that Mr. McEachern and his partners had blown up a recently buried corpse to make it look like a mining accident. However, what the scheming opportunists didn't take into account was that red paint splattered on a rotting corpse would never fool a genuine lawman like Sheriff Bell. Folks in the gold camp were furious with the thugs and wanted to lynch the despicable grave robbers, but despite protests, a hasty trial was held. McEachern was sentenced to life in prison for the foolish prank. Incredibly, just 1 year into his sentence, The grave robber escaped from prison and found new digs in sunny Mexico. The grave and museum of William F. Cody can be found on Lookout Mountain Road, just west of Golden. Madame Pearl de Vere's former old homestead is one of only 2 remaining brothel museums in the entire country, and well worth the visit. While in Cripple Creek, you may also want to visit the historic Mount Pisgah Cemetery to see the cement-encased grave of Pearl de Vere. Pearl's many admirers often leave her small tokens of affection. Chapter 24: Haunted Mines. The boundaries which divide life and death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where one ends and the other begins? Edgar Allan Poe. Colorado's roots began in mining, and the industry soon became the backbone of its economy. Sadly, many prospectors were killed in explosions, suffocated by poisonous gas or drowned in the deep, dark caverns of the underworld. Many of the miners in Colorado came from the old country with European superstitions and traditional beliefs about ghosts and hauntings. Several spooky stories were spawned from ancient Cornish legends about Tommyknockers. These troll-like supernatural beings sometimes helped the miners by knocking rapidly on the side of the cavern walls to warn of impending doom. However, Tommyknockers also had a devious reputation and were known to steal lanterns, lunch buckets, and golden nuggets when the miners weren't looking. There are many ghost stories about spooky mines in Colorado, and perhaps the most popular center on the Mary Murphy Mine near Leadville, where an explosion killed over 100 people. Rumors soon began to circulate that the Mary Murphy bunkhouse was also haunted, as noted in the December 18, 1912 Colorado Springs Gazette, with the following headline, "Say Bunkhouse Haunted." 4 miners lodging at the bunkhouse became sick after eating dinner and suddenly died. A wealthy Londoner also became ill after eating the meal and perished a few days after his associates. At first, it was suspected that the men were deliberately poisoned by union activists, but later it was learned that they all had died from ptomaine poisoning after eating bad spinach. What? What is that? Shortly after the deaths, 6 miners quit their jobs and moved out of the bunkhouse, claiming that it was inhabited by ghosts. The Harding smelting plant in Aspen also suffered from a haunted reputation when a Frenchman was killed in a fit of anger by another miner. Shortly after the murder, the Frenchman's ghost was seen by many people, including the night watchman, who was so frightened that he tried to kill the apparition. On November 27, 1892, the Aspen Daily Leader headlined, "A specter in an Aspen smelter, ghostly shade that wanders about, defying leaden ball from a revolver." With so many haunted mines in Colorado, one might wonder which one had the most diabolical reputation, and ghost hunting historians would likely agree that the title goes to the Mame Mine near Leadville. From the mine's earliest days, many miners were mutilated in accidents and died within its deep, dark keep, and sometimes their bodies were never found. Miners who worked at the Mame Mine believed that it was home to the devil himself, and legends told of tunnels that were chiseled into sacred Indian burial grounds. Sometimes shadowy creatures would frighten the miners by calling out their names when no one else was around. In the daylight hours, very little was ever said about the mysterious happenings of the underworld mine. However, during the hushed, whiskey-soaked conversations, a few brave men got up the gumption to confess their concerns about the spook-riddled tomb. Finally, the wearied miners revolted by walking off the job, with only a stubborn few remaining on the skeleton crew. As the prospectors dug deeper and deeper into the mountain, barely audible whispers turned into frighteningly guttural voices, although no one could decipher what they were actually saying. Even more disturbing were the horned figures that fluttered about and would mysteriously vanish into thin air. The most famous ghost story about the main mine began on April 15th, 1894, when at 6 p.m., an emergency alarm sounded and the foreman thought he heard his brother-in-law calling for his help. The foreman was bewildered to find out that his bloodied, one-armed brother-in-law had silently climbed out of the service bucket and walked a few yards towards his home before falling dead. A bundle of dynamite had exploded in his hand, and he bled to death before anyone could help. A funeral was held, and everyone who knew the affable man was upset by the tragedy, but the very next day it was business as usual. Exactly 1 week after the tragic death, the foreman heard the emergency bell ring once again at 6 p.m. and lifted the service bucket to find a horribly injured miner. The gruesomely mangled body was missing an arm, and the man's unrecognizable face was covered in blood. The foreman reached out to help, but the miner disappeared as soon as he clasped his hand. The foreman nearly fainted when he realized he'd just shaken hands with the ghost of his brother-in-law. The next night at the exact same time, the spooky incident repeated again, only this time, the foreman had witnesses. The entire topside crew watched in disbelief as the one-armed ghost crawled out of the bucket and disappeared into thin air. Apparently, several miners below had also seen a bloodied one-armed man signaling the shaft bucket just before quitting time. They had seen him every night since the miner had been killed. The witnesses explained that they had been too afraid to say anything to anyone. The awful paranormal scene played out repeatedly over the following months, and rumors about the haunted mine spread far and wide. In the winter of 1894, the overworked miners looked forward to a few days' rest over the holidays. However, on Christmas Day, the topside crew was forced to work after the mine inexplicably flooded. The crew was hesitant to bail out the shaft using the haunted bucket, but it was the only device they had at their disposal. Strangely, when they lowered the bucket down for the 13th time, the cable caught around the foreman's neck, and the other miners watched in absolute horror as he was beheaded right before their very eyes. The spook miners later found the foreman's hat, never located his head. The headless foreman was buried next to the grave of his one-armed brother-in-law. The miners began calling the haunted mine the Widowmaker, as the name continued to take the lives of miners and spit out their ravaged bodies by way of the haunted service bucket. Some old-timers in Leadville still remember haunted tales about the evil mine, but no one ever brings it up, and who can blame them? Are you planning a trip to Aspen? If so, the Spooky Dark Side Tour is a must. Let's see how long this story is. Yeah, it's longer than the time we have before our next break, so we'll just go early. What do you think about that? So, on that note, boys and girls, we will go to our first music break. And on this music break, we have King Cinnamon from Biafra, Nigeria, with Fantastic and Ala Imo Ederella. And then he's going to be singing Fantastic and, yeah, just as I said, that song. Hosni Bronx, who is basically an original member from Bob Marley and the Wailers. And he's going to be singing Dance as a Lion. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
We swap on the like my water bam bam. King Cinnamon. Oh shit, bad. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Know your bam bam, it is a Friday. Mama, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Know your bam bam, it is a Friday. Mama, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Fantastic. Pretty brother, baby, gather something. Come on closer, baby, gather 19. I know you better, but I am the king. Your backside bigger than Bombay. Baby girl, broncotum. I like the way you want your broncotum. Baby girl, broncotum. I like the way you want your broncotum. Jamaica, Ghana, shout out to the ladies in Asia, Nigeria, South Africa. Say me love you. Please me, baby. Yeah. Turn up from you. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam if it's a Friday. Come on, let's go, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Shake your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam if it's a Friday. Come on, let's go, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Give me love. Me want you, me love you. Give me love. Oh, give me love. Hey, please me, baby. Oh. Yeah, turn up from you. Yeah, take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam if it's a Friday. Come on, let's go, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Shake your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's go, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic.
Why, Babylon, you want our
Kanyi kele Chineke makwa n'ala Imo bụ ndị njem ọnụ. Kanyi kele onye nwụwa ịmakwa n'ala Imo bụ ndị njem ọnụ. Imo, Alime Kerelo, Alimo, Alime Kerelo, Alimo State, Alime Kerelo, Alimo, Alime Kerelo, Alimo State, Alime Kerelo, Alimo, Alime Kerelo, Democracy Merielo, Ndime Merielo, Alimo, Alime Kerelo, Alimo, Alime Kerelo, Alimo State, Alime Kerelo, Alimo, Alime Kerelo, Democracy Merielo, Ndime Merielo, Elegama, making head ya. Ebere marama, Ovana marama, Yes lady marama, Her Excellency, Emeka Edio Hama, Emeka Edio Hama, Omenka Unanya Nidio Hama, Omenka Unanya wa, Emeka Meki Modima, Emeka Modima, Emeka put on no boy. Oh yeah. Wa wulenu. Emeka put on no boy. Welcome Adima. We me wan posto. Emeka Meki Modima. Emeka Meki Modima. Ndem jejemba. Mwan jejemba. Ndem jemano. Deputy Governor Imo State Chilike. Gerard Ronna Karaka, Wokoma Dima, Porabo, Deputy Governor, Deregima, Alukuta Deregima, Alimo State Deregima, Ala Nigeria Maragima, Onye Jemonu, Stanley Wamuche Karaka, Stanley Onye Babamba, President Good Life Foundation, Shirike, President General, Senate Group of Companies, President General, Financial Matter Karaka, Alo were Diregima, Alambise Diregima, Alimo State Diregima, Ala Nigeria Maragima, Onye Jemano, Franklin Neji Shiriko, Pepe Arabido Hotels, ABC Transport Karaka, Alo were Diregima, Alambise Diregima, Alimo State Diregima, Ala Nigeria Maragima, Uchonya go chande, Honorable Wokoma Dima, Onye Horo Nyakeleni Yao, Mawugi, Ginando Tugio, Mawunule, Njijigari Jinala, Imo State Yo, Mawugi, Ginando Tugio, Mawunule, Minigari Zonala, Imo State Yo, Alo were Diregima, Alo were Diregima, Alimo State Diregima, Ala Nigeria Maragima, the German, Orange Drugs Limited, Jisa Anthony Ifani Chubundu Business na Ishirike, Ikenga Dijele, pride of his people, most outstanding one, Okoma Marama, Iborabo, Alo were Diregima, Alija Diregima, Alimo State Diregima, Ala Nigeria Maragima, Honorable Jogwagu Shirike, Honorable Bina Shirike, Jere Labosa Shirike, Tochukwa Kereke Shirike, Okahube Shirike, Intina Beninaji Shirike, Onyamana Construction, Wokoma Dima Ikaraka, Onya Shiwore Heborani, Dejemu Imarama, Wokoma Dejemba, Wokoma Dima Ikaraka, Wiz Popule, Ibo Felamo, Onyamana Pito, Akana Kumpa, Ikaraka, Eziwa Mama, Mr. Ludiriwa, Wokome Dejemba, CEO Elizabeth Ventures, Ikaraka, Democracy Merielo, Ndime Merielo. Democracy Merielo, Ndime Merielo, Alime Gerelo, Alime Gerelo. Thank God I'm from Imo State. Emeka has come to rejuvenate Imo State. Make you jubilate, make you celebrate. Emeka Shikwen be say, this one no be say them say, Emeka has come to rejuvenate, Imo State, celebrate, make we jubilate. Ala mekele His Excellency, Achikudenwa, mekele kwa His Excellency Dr. Hakim. Yemaka Right Honorable BDK, mekele kwa Right Honorable Jones Oyereri. Ala mekele Senator Onyebuchi Mr. Empowerment. Mekele kwa Right Honorable Emeka Chinedu. Umo mimo lowali bia meziana Alima de lama.
Welcome back, and thanks so much for joining me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. So, we have this last chapter in our book, Forgotten Tales of Colorado. There's a couple more sections in there after that chapter, so odds and ends, bibliography about the author. Yeah, so I'm thinking we're going to finish this before third hour even. Chapter 25, Spooky Legends. The communication of the dead is tongued with fire beyond the language of the living. T.S. Eliot. There have been many books written about Colorado ghost stories, and here are a few of my favorite tales. Indian curses. It seems that everywhere you look in Colorado, an area is known to have an Indian curse put on it, especially in Meeker. Nathan Meeker had high hopes of building a prosperous community. But despite his good intentions, he got off on the wrong foot with the Indians when he plowed over their racetrack. What? The mistake ended up costing Meeker his life, as the Indians drove a stake through his heart. After the tragedy, Meeker's ranch was said to be cursed. On July 22nd, 1900, the Denver Post recapped the mystery with the headline, Deadly Hoodoo Hovers Over the Meeker Ranch. Haunted Rails. 1885. A locomotive for the Denver South Park and Pacific was barreling through South Park and nearly plowed into a colossal haystack. When the engineer inspected the tracks, he noticed that there weren't any. Apparently, the train had hydroplaned across the frozen tundra, jumping the track somewhere around Fairplay. Crew members drew straws to see which lucky guy got to explain the calamity of the boss man. It might have just been easier to explain that the train was haunted. The dangerous train route over Marshall Pass was well known as being haunted. One cold night as the train approached Marshall Pass, the engineer noticed a rogue train chasing them. More coal was shoveled into the boiler as the locomotive careened through dark tunnels and shook over several bridges. Still, the mystery train doggedly pursued and tried to run them off the track. Suddenly, the menacing train tumbled over a cliff. The engineer couldn't believe his eyes. He looked out the window to survey the damage, but the phantom locomotive had disappeared into thin air. According to the Denver Post, the engineer found a message scratched into the ice of the engine window that read, "The train that was following you last night was wrecked and 4 men were killed. And if you ever run the route again, you too will be wrecked." The foreboding message and ghostly hallucinations emotionally wrecked the engineer, and he soon retired after the inexplicable incident. Oh no! I think I accidentally closed that tab, because this is a touch screen. Hold on. I did close it, but fortunately we got it back. Haunted trees. Old Monarch was a colossal cottonwood tree that once stood at the center of Union Avenue in Pueblo. The tree was once known as the hanging tree, as 14 men had been lynched from its massive branches, and Old Monarch soon gained a haunted reputation. The tree was eventually cut down in the name of progress, but a cross-section was preserved and can be seen at the El Pueblo Museum. Another haunted hanging tree is located in Morrison, but the spookiest cottonwood, known as the Hell Tree, is located in La Porte. Legend holds that long ago, a goat farmer murdered his entire family along with all his workers by stringing them up in the tree before hanging himself as well. For more information on the haunted Fort Collins area, please visit www.hauntedfortcollins.com or call 970-372-1445. You can also read the book Ghosts of Fort Collins, also published by the History Press. Creekside Ghosts. The ghost of William Toole is known to haunt the shores of East Boulder Creek. The young man was lynched by a mob near the creek for stealing horses in 1867. However, shortly after the necktie party, it was discovered that Toole was actually innocent. For years afterward, local newspapers reported sightings of the ghost of William Toole, a blood-soaked rope hanging from his neck on the east shore of Boulder Creek. For more information on Haunted Boulder, visit www.spiritparanormal.com. Musician ghosts. Clifford Griffin was a handsome Englishman who moved to Silver Plume to escape a painful past. Clifford's fiancée was murdered on the eve of their wedding, and her killer was never found. Clifford became a successful prospector and built a cabin high above the village of Silver Plume. Every night at sundown, the townsfolk enjoyed hearing the Englishman's lonesome violin recitals echo through the canyon. One summer night, just after sundown, Clifford played a beautiful love song, which was followed by the sound of a gunshot. The Englishman was found lying in a shallow grave dug by his own hand. A nearby marble tombstone had been engraved by the Englishman to include his name, date of birth, and date of death, June 19, 1887. The townsfolk held a funeral and buried Griffin as he requested in a suicide note. Shortly after his death, many people saw and heard the violinist near his cabin. Even today, folks swear that the handsome Englishman haunts his grave above Silver Plume, especially around the anniversary of his death. Fairplace Cemetery Ghosts. Prospector J. Dawson was found dead at the bottom of a mine in the summer of 1865. Shortly after the funeral, Dawson's bones were found in the bed of a dance hall girl in Alma. The bones were reburied but reappeared again in the bed of another beautiful young woman. This strange event happened several times over many years, and in 1872, Dawson's bones actually followed a lovely lady into another state. The bones were shipped back to Fairplay, and someone finally threw them into a deep hole of an outhouse. Oh my gosh, that is so bad. Dawson still haunts the cemetery in Fairplay, but has thankfully stayed out of women's beds for the last century. The ghost of Silver Hills is also known to haunt the cemetery near the grave of her fiancé, who died from smallpox. Silver Hills was a dance hall girl who nursed many of the miners with smallpox. After the epidemic passed, the miners took up a collection for the pretty young woman, but she was nowhere to be found. Because of her selfless devotion, the miners named the loveliest mountain near Fairplay Silver Hills in her honor. Spooky State Capitol. In 1979, when two mysterious skulls were found in an old crate in the basement of the state capitol, haunted rumors about the building began to make sense. The Noggins had apparently belonged to the Espinosa brothers, who ruthlessly murdered nearly 30 white men in retaliation for the Mexican-American War. The brothers were eventually caught and decapitated by Tom Tobin, a scout working out of Fort Garland. Tobin never received a reward for the heads of the outlaws. Perhaps the deprived scout is the restless spirit who still haunts the Capitol building. For more information on Denver's haunts, please see The Haunted Heart of Denver, also published by the History Press. Haunted Ludlow. The mining camp of Ludlow was the scene of a violent labor dispute between miners and management. Nearly 24 innocent people were shot or burned to death, many of them women and children. The Light in the Dark paranormal team performed an investigation of the Ludlow massacre site, and their astonishing evidence can be seen at www.lightinthedarkparanormal.wordpress.com, 2012-11-01. Our presentation in Pueblo. Telegraph Ghost. In the late 1800s, the Palmer Lake Telegraph Station began receiving phantom messages from Denver, and the mystery was never solved. For more information on the historic Tri-Lakes region, please visit www.palmerdividehistory.org. Eddie needed coffee. The surprise ground crew struck gold while digging the foundation for the Victor Hotel, and this led to the development of the gold coin mine. The beautiful historic hotel is believed to be haunted by the ghost of Eddie, the miner who lived in the hotel in the 1930s. One morning on his way to work, Eddie somehow fell down the old birdcage elevator shaft to his death. If you are not too afraid, request to stay in Eddie's room. Littleton Ghosts on February 25, 1918 headlines of The Carbonate Chronicle read, Criminals shun haunted Hooskow. According to the article, prisoners began pleading guilty in order to be sent to the state penitentiary because they were too afraid to spend the night in the city's haunted jail. Twisted Sisters. Devout spiritualist Alice Crawford haunts Redstone Castle, where she once lived, and her sister Emma haunts the nearby Red Mountain, where she was once buried. Emma's ghost was so popular with tourists that train tracks were constructed so that visitors could ride to the top of the mountain to visit her grave. Perhaps Emma didn't like getting all the attention and wanted to escape her grave situation. Her coffin washed down the mountain in 1927, and her skeletal remains were found at the bottom of a gully. Emma was reburied in the Manitou Springs Crystal Hill Cemetery, and many people think that is why she still haunts Red Mountain to this day. On the last Saturday in October, the town of Manitou Springs hosts the Emma Crawford Festival and coffin races. For more information, please visit www.manitoulegends.com. That would be epic. I'm going to have to pause for a minute and write this down. Yeah, that was definitely too cool to pass up for sure. Odds and ends. Truth is stranger than fiction. Lord Byron. Here are a few strange but true forgotten tales that were just too good to leave out. Headless chickens. In 1884, the Denver Post featured a story about a headless chicken that was exhibited for Denver University medical students. The fowl had been beheaded by Mrs. J.A. Scott of Littleton, but the next day the headless bird was still strutting his stuff like nothing ever happened. The students determined that just enough of the chicken's brainstem was left intact to keep the bird alive. In 1946, the incident happened again when Lloyd Olson, a farmer in Fruita, decapitated a rowdy rooster named Mike, planning to fry him for Sunday supper. But Mike had other plans and continued to run around the yard like a chicken with his head cut off until the farmer tired of the chase. The next morning, when the farmer saw the cocky rooster trying to peck for food without a head, he eventually felt sorry for the befuddled fowl. Lloyd Olson kept Mike alive for 18 months by forcing nutrients down the rooster's throat with an eyedropper. Mike enjoyed his new career and traveled all over the country, meeting new peeps and hanging out with cute chicks. Folks were charged a quarter each to gawk at the headless wonder, and that wasn't just chicken feed back then. Miracle Mike was featured in various newspapers and magazines and was even mentioned in the Guinness Book of World Records. In 1998, the town of Fruita began hosting the Mike the Chicken Festival, held annually in May. Man, I gotta write that one down too. The Boy with X-Ray Eyes. Dr. Frank W. Brett of Denver stated that when his son Leo was just 10 years old, he discovered that he had an amazing talent for seeing straight through things. And he was not speaking figuratively. After going into a trance, Leo Brett could see through clothes, skin, bones, internal organs, muscles, nerves, and even the blood pumping through veins. The child's visions were said to be in colorful graphic detail. On July 3, 1904, the Denver Post featured the story with the headline, Boy with X-ray Eyes Who Can See Through the Body. Snakes in sleeping bags. Native Americans passed down fantastic stories from generation to generation about a strange fire-breathing serpent known as the Culebra de Lumbers, or the fire snake. These legendary serpents killed by spitting fire and searing the vital organs of its victims. Even today, folks will caution campers to zip their bedrolls because the nocturnal monsters like to attack sleepers. Locals will also tell you to never eat yellow snow, but that is a completely different story. Shady Ladies. In Cripple Creek, shady ladies were given physical examinations once a month, and those who did not comply were fined or thrown in jail. If the soiled dove had children, they were incarcerated along with their mother in the same small cell for up to 1 year at a time. For more information on law and order in the Old West, visit the Outlaw and Lawman Jail Museum in Cripple Creek at 136 West Bennett Avenue, or call 719-689-6556. Fishtails. When a woman lost her wedding ring at Prospect Lake, her husband vowed to find the ring, but she just scoffed at the possibility. When the lake was drained to make repairs in 2004, the woman and her husband went fishing with a metal detector in hand. The amateur treasure hunters searched only half an hour before finding the wedding ring on the south shore where it was lost 39 years earlier. There was no doubt that the ring belonged to her because her engraved name was still legible on the inside rib. That is super cool. Bad manners. In 1876, George Harrington was a bartender at Patterson's Saloon in La Junta. One day a kid walked in and asked for a drink. When George refused, the youngster shot him dead. George has the dubious distinction of being the first man buried in the La Junta Fairview Cemetery. I'm sure that is something that he did not want to be remembered for. Tornadoes. How would you feel if you had just had a fight with your dad over borrowing the wagon only to see him be whisked away to Kansas by a tornado? On June 16, 1917, headlines in the Pueblo Chieftain reported, Clarence Fanner's parent picked up by tornado, dies of injuries. Radioactive hot springs. Colorado is well known for its wealth of natural mineral springs, many of which became hot spots for tourists, with all the hot springs in the state competing were tourist dollars. Businessmen had to think of ways to get attention. When traces of radium were found in the water, the industry commercialized it as being very healthy. In Ouray, the hot springs were advertised as being the most radioactive hot springs in the world. On May 1st, 1904, headlines in the Colorado Springs Gazette rejoiced. Radium in Manitou Springs, important discovery in mineral waters. Well, what the heck? Now I don't ever want to go to a hot springs in Ouray again. I'm hoping that the cavernous one that I went to when I was I think 15 or 16 with some family friends, that was part of a hotel and it was in this cave and it was pretty interesting. Yeah, I wonder where that exactly is. Dead Guy Hotel Policy. The Sheraton Hotel was built in Telluride in 1891, but burned to the ground just 3 years later. In 1895, the new Sheraton Hotel was built on the same site, but this time was constructed of brick. Folks were still anxious about staying in the new hotel, so management initiated a new promotion that if you died while spending the night in the hotel, you wouldn't have to pay for your room or the funeral. That was pretty nice of them. Holy cow! Since it opened on August 12, 1892, Denver's Brown Palace was never closed. The triangular-shaped hotel was built on cow pasture owned by its namesake, Henry C. Brown, after Brown had been kicked out of Denver's opulent Windsor Hotel for wearing cowboy boots. The rancher spared no expense building his fine hotel and even had a crematorium built into the building's basement. In 1911, the hotel was the scene of a scandalous high society murder, and it has been known to be haunted ever since. Every year since 1945, the hotel has hosted a ceremony honoring the Stockman show, during which the prize steers led into the lobby on a red carpet and persuaded to drink out of the Silver Championship Cup. I wonder how hard that is. Sky High Crapper. Before the days of modern plumbing, the opulent Strater Hotel in Durango featured a unique 3-story privy. Well, I didn't know that. Wow. The He-Man Woman Haters Club. In 1890, Frenchman Louis Dupuy started a successful bakery in Georgetown, which he later turned into a hotel. The establishment became well known as a fine hostelry and restaurant, one where women weren't allowed. On May 18, 1911, headlines for the Denver Weekly News marveled the mystery of Louis Dupuy, story of the Hotel de Paris, where no woman was ever allowed as a guest. The old hotel is now a museum, and women are now allowed to visit. For more information, please visit www.hotelparismuseum.org. I bet that ghost is pretty mad if he still exists. When church leader Mary Bryan died in Rocky Ford long ago, everyone knew she was an angel. Their suspicions were confirmed when a feather crown was found inside the old woman's pillow stuffing. Old-timers once believed that when someone died and went to heaven, a crown that looked somewhat like a feathered bird's nest would miraculously appear in the deceased person's pillow. Alamosa's Prince. On November 25, 1910, headlines in the Colorado Springs Gazette read, "Corpse of Chinese Prince located in Alamosa Cemetery." Apparently, Yuan Chao Guam was a direct descendant of the Ming Dynasty and had to leave the country when he was accused of being insubordinate. Secret Service agents from the United States Immigration Department searched for the prince for 4 years before his corpse was discovered in the Alamosa Cemetery, whom was said to be worth an immense fortune. Man. That's crazy. He just went there and, I don't know, did away with himself. Letter from Heaven. On October 8th, 1911, jaw-dropping headlines for the Denver Post announced, Hoodoo Letter, purporting to be from Christ. The letter explained that a chain letter from God had been circulating for 30 years and was even signed by the Archangel Gabriel. The legend of Mount Shavano. Mount Shavano can be seen near the town of Salida. In the early summer, after much of the snow melts, an angel with outstretched wings can be seen on the side of the mountain. Legend holds that the angel of Mount Shavano was an Indian princess who sacrificed her life by jumping from the summit of the mountain to appease the gods and put an end to a long drought, and that the princess's tears formed the lakes, streams, and rivers of Colorado. Now every year, the angel appears for a few weeks to remind folks of her sacrifice. Colorado's first flag. Excuse me. The laundress, jokingly known as Countess Katrina Murat, is considered to be the Betsy Ross of Colorado, as she was the first to fashion an American flag to fly over the Colorado Territory. Katrina was a daughter of the American Revolution who fashioned the flag from the discarded ball gown and her husband's red long johns. Nice. Alright, there's the bibliography. Ooh, I will check that out later. Nice. So there's different books that things were brought from. Ghost Stories of Colorado. Silver Queen, The Fabulous Story of Baby Doe. Law and Disorder in Colorado City. To Create a Castle. The Pearl of Cripple Creek, the story of Cripple Creek's famous Madame Pearl de Vere. Colorado's Historic Hotels. Weird, Wacky, and Wild Colorado Trivia. The Time Traveler in Old Colorado. Treasure Tales of the Rockies. Legends and Tales of the Rockies. I never knew that about Colorado, a quaint volume of forgotten lore. More that I never knew about Colorado. The Crime Buff's Guide to the Outlaw Rockies. Tales, Trails, and Tommyknockers, stories from Colorado's past. A Wild West history of frontier Colorado pioneers, gunslingers, and cattle kings on the Eastern Plains. Colorado's local legends and best-kept secrets. Colorado curiosities, quirky characters, roadside oddities, and other offbeat stuff. Colorado's strangest, a legacy of bizarre events and eccentric people. Ghosts of Fort Collins. Strange but True Colorado, Weird Tales of the Wild West. Historic Old Colorado City. Brothels, bordellos, and bad girls, prostitution in Colorado. Mysteries and Legends of Colorado, true stories of the unsolved and unexplained. Enter the Valley. Here Lies Colorado Springs. Book of Great Thoughts and Funny Sayings. Spooky Colorado, Tales of Hauntings, Strange Happenings, and Other Lore. The Synchronized Universe, New Science of the Paranormal. Notorious San Juan's Wicked Tales from Ouray, San Juan, and La Plata counties. Ghosts of Colorado Springs and Pikes Peak. Haunted Manatee Springs. From the Grave, a roadside guide to Colorado's pioneer cemeteries. Very nice. And I just learned today that Plata is silver, so La Plata is the silver. What? About the author. Stephanie Waters grew up in Colorado and has been stretching the blanket since she was just a babe. The armchair philosopher has a degree in liberal arts and a long pedigree of yarn spinners in her family. Stephanie was a professional storyteller before opening a haunted bed and breakfast in Manitou Springs. She is also a proud card-carrying member of the Old Colorado City Historical Society and Adventure Club. The self-described history geek has owned Blue Moon Haunted History Tours and Colorado Ghost Tours LLC since 2002 and sponsors the annual Colorado Paranormal Convention. What? I'm gonna have to check that out. Colorado Paranormal Convention. Stephanie is the author of Haunted Manitou Springs and Ghosts of Colorado Springs and Pikes Peak, both published by the History Press. The accidental author was excited to write this book, especially because of her lifelong fascination with the Old West and her relationship to the James Gang. Stephanie happens to be a distant relative of the James Gang member Wendy Jim Cummins, and remembers her great-grandmother, a full-blooded Cherokee, telling her about knowing the outlaw Jesse James. No doubt Stephanie's nefarious heritage is to blame for her unbridled mischief, especially whenever she gets caught dumpster diving or devouring raw meat. Stephanie is also an artist who enjoys finger painting, drinking milk, and lukewarm baths. Visit us at historypress.net. Well, that's it for that book. We still got a little bit of time before second break, so we'll get into some Reddit ghost stories. Reddit ghost stories. This Reddit ghost story is by user original-zucchini102. My mom accidentally caused a haunting. Hello, I am fairly new to this subreddit and I love your stories. I already posted once for my experience about something new that has happened at the place I'm renting. So I also thought to share as well my previous experience of the paranormal. With the time, my mother caused our family home to have a spirit. Please bear with me. It's a long story. So my experience with the supernatural starts with the unexpected death of my grandma from my mother's side. When I was in the 6th grade, I had to go see my family in Mexico for what has been about 4 years since our last visit. I saw my cousins, uncles, aunts, and other family friends that knew my grandma and helped Mom and our family out with her old house to be eventually sold to whoever wants it. After my grandma's funeral and our travel from La Mira, Mexico, back to my home, I noticed for the first time ever my mom be stricken with grief. She cried day and night. I would come home from school and my dad had to take me to my aunt's house that lives close to us to spend my afternoon there, since he didn't want to see my mom crying and not be her usual self. My mom ended up going through some items of my grandma's that were mainly photos, knickknacks, and clothes that belonged to my grandmother. That's when she saw this book. It had an eye in a middle pyramid, and it was all in Spanish, so I really couldn't tell you what the book's contents was. My mom revealed to me that the book was about how to get in touch or communicate with people who were deceased. So my mother started to read how to talk to my grandma. I remember majority of the time she would burn a candle, say some words, and then she would not say anything. It was 2 nights she did this with no major response, or a knock or murmur to fulfill my mom's wishes. Until the 3rd night, we had prior to the events put up pictures of all people who had died in our family on our wall with the addition of my grandma's photo. Next to a crucifix we have in the living room area, my mom did her ritual. It was 10 at night when we started to hear banging. My dad goes to see what was happening, and then my grandma's photo was found flung from the wall to our middle of the living room and was broken. This obviously scared my mom and dad as they are superstitious and religious. But my dad chalked it up to maybe it rolled over and our AC was blowing strong air to knock the photo. But if that was the case, why didn't the other pictures fall over? Plus, these weren't normal small thuds. They were bangs like someone hitting the wall with their fist. My mom fixed the photo of my grandma and reinforced all the pictures with better nails with my dad. She had tried to talk to my grandpa. I don't know why she switched up, but my grandpa died exactly 2 years before my grandma, so she wanted to try him next. That's when the same night we all heard a bang on the wall and then the sound of glass shattering. And it was my grandpa's photo with the nail still stuck on the wall and his picture further closer towards the left side of the living room. My mom had enough and got rid of the book, but the occurrences were far from over. I started to hear my name being called out more. I swear I was being called from my mom, even if she was not home. I heard it once from a voice from my dad, but was sleeping when I went to look for him in his bedroom. I thought maybe it was just me being a kid and having selective hearing and thinking I am being called. Until my parents left for one night to a couples therapy session with my church from 6 to 11. Well, that's a long couples therapy. I was alone with no supervision at home, which was usually when I'd watch movies or play extra hours of video games. Well, I finished watching X-Men on DVD in my living room. I turned off the lights and proceeded to look at vines on my iPod, when I had a sudden chill as if someone's watching me. I hear noises and proceed to call my parents to come back home. I see then the chairs move and push me as if to throw me down. The swiveling chairs of the kitchen that's close to the living room get knocked over. My mom's voice is tuned out of pure horror of what I'm witnessing as it's straight out of the poltergeist. Then my name is called. I looked to my right and there it was. I saw out my left eye a spirit. It looked like my grandma, but I've seen too many movies to know that's not my grandma, so I book it and run to my parents' room. Scared shitless, I drop the home phone, it breaks, and I lock the bedroom door and hear banging coming from the door. When after the longest minute ever it stops, my parents, after 9 minutes pass, come home. When it was 9, since I saw the time from my dad's electric clock. I had nightmares after that, frightening nightmares that were about me and other versions of myself, chasing me in a forest of gray mists, and they could catch me and do nasty and terrible things to me, which I won't go into just because I want to keep this story SFW. But after these nightmares and events, my uncle, who is a shaman, or a curandero in our Mexican culture, blessed our house, rubbed eggs on us, and we saw the yolks turn black, and our church's priest came to bless our home and never had any problems with spirits afterwards. I did find that book years later, but remembering those events, I just burned it. I used it for kindling for a bonfire me and my friends had in 2017. What could have been the spirits, since I never really got answers after these 14 years? Evie, okay, says, sounds like a demon attracted to your mother's grief. She put out a call and invited it in, thinking she was contacting family spirits. This one is by user Sarah_Peyton. My dead neighbor's dog still barks at 3:40 p.m. every day. My elderly neighbor, Mr. Chin, had a terrier that barked every day at 3:40 p.m. like clockwork. Kind of an excited someone's home bark. Mr. Chin died 3 months ago. His family took the dog. His apartment is empty. The barking hasn't stopped. Same time, same bark, coming from inside his empty apartment. I've checked multiple times. No one's there. My friend that came over has heard it too, so I know I'm not losing it. Doesn't feel scary, honestly. It's just sad, like something's still waiting for him. This is by XX Madit OXX. The basement that keeps stories. More strange things in my house. Years later, I returned to the small town where I had grown up and started asking older residents about the house I had lived in. What I had discovered was unsettling. Many families had moved in over the years, and strange, unexplained events seemed to follow each of them. Some neighbors told me about lights turning on and off when no one was home, doors left ajar, and objects misplaced in ways that couldn't be explained by forgetfulness. Others spoke quietly about arguments that erupted for no reason, illnesses that came suddenly, or accidents that shouldn't have happened. The story of the house itself began to take shape. One family decades ago had been very happy, young parents with 2 children. But one day, something terrible happened. A fire started in the kitchen while no one was home, narrowly missing the children but leaving a lasting scar on the house. After that, misfortune seemed to follow every family that lived there. Illnesses, sudden deaths, accidents, and endless small unsettling events. It was as if the house had absorbed that tragedy and carried it forward, shaping the experiences of everyone who came after. By the time I returned, I could see patterns repeating, families moving in with hope, only to face unexplained misfortune, small and large. Even now, thinking about that house makes my stomach turn. There were no ghosts, no supernatural forces, but the weight of its history, the repeated suffering of so many families, was enough to make anyone wary. The basement I had feared as a child and the strange things I had witnessed were all part of that continuing story. This is by the same user, XXMadItOXX. The basement that keeps stories. What was the last one called? Oh. Yeah, that one was before this one. Okay, good. I was 9 years old when I went down to the basement for the first time, even though my mom always told me, never go alone. She wasn't home, and I wanted to get my old toys. The basement was cold and dark with a concrete floor and walls covered in dust and mold. Boxes and old furniture were scattered everywhere. In one corner I found notes and documents from the previous owners. In every family someone had died, the son of one family from illness, a child in another who fell and never recovered, another person who simply disappeared. While I was looking through the boxes, my heart was pounding and my legs felt frozen. I decided to go back upstairs. I ran up the stairs and reached the safety and light of the house. A month later, my grandmother fell seriously ill and never got better. She died 1 month after the first symptoms appeared. Mom said it was just coincidence. But I remembered the basement, the notes, the cold, and the darkness. To this day, I wonder why people kept losing someone close to them, and I just knew this wasn't just a coincidence. This is by user a peach das gone. I don't know how to explain this. I visited my hometown of Noonan, Georgia, an old Civil War hospital town. I was walking around downtown when I felt this dark, painful, suffering presence directly in front of this old house on the strip. I stopped in my tracks and compulsively said aloud, "Oh, you're haunted, aren't you, love?" And made a note to my friend about the original wood flooring on the porch, talked about how I knew, and walked on. I get back to my hotel about 30 minutes later and notice these bruises when I was washing up. I haven't hit my arm, fallen, or carried anything heavy. It looks like someone with small hands grabbed me with both hands. After this, at my hotel, I kept feeling like I wasn't alone. Feeling uncomfortable, I decided to take a shower. That's what I would do if I was uncomfortable and freaked out. I really wouldn't. I've watched too much horror movies and Alfred Hitchcock, for Pete's sake. The shower is not a safe place when it's like really freaky out. I was in there a few minutes when all of a sudden I heard a loud bang. I peered out of the side of the curtain, and the bathroom door that I had left wide open was shut. I suddenly heard more banging and saw the door shaking as if someone was pounding on it. The front door was locked, so I knew no one got in. I flung the door open and nothing was physically there. I had this strange feeling that a woman was in my room. I looked down at my arm and got really annoyed and said, "Whoever you are not welcome. This is my body. Houses my soul. Leave me and do not stay in this hotel." I hoped that would help, but the feeling didn't go away for long. I could feel the presence standing in the doorway between the bathroom door and the main room. I felt like she was trying to tell me something and wouldn't leave. I then had a random thought that I needed to open the door, so I did and said, "Exit." I immediately felt a cold breeze move past me from inside the room to outside, even though I had the heater on. I haven't felt the presence since, but I haven't been able to sleep, so I thought I would share here. Well, thanks for sharing. This one is by user much-evening6686. My brother can tell when someone is going to die, but how does he see it? This is a story I heard from my friend Melissa, a pseudonym, about her older brother. I decided to write it down in her own voice, so if you have some time, please read it. I have an older brother, 3 years older than me. My brother has always been quiet since he was little, the kind of person you'd call sensitive or overly serious. While most boys love to play outside and be loud with friends, he hated noise and preferred to stay indoors, watching TV or reading comic books. He was the complete opposite of me, who was always outside making noise and laughing with friends. Even our parents and relatives used to say, "It's like the two of you were born switched." Even so, we got along surprisingly well. We often talked about TV shows and comic books together. Since my brother rarely went out, he didn't have many friends. One day I asked him, "Aren't you lonely? You don't have any friends, do you?" He answered, "I'm not lonely. I have 2 friends in the house. I talk to them about all sorts of things." Our family was poor at the time, so we lived in an old rundown rental house in a cheap neighborhood. But I had never seen my brother with anyone other than family, so I asked, "Where are your friends in the house?" He said, "They don't come out when everyone's awake. It's too noisy. They come out at night when I'm the only one here. That's when we talk." It sounded strange, but since my brother often made up stories and wrote them down in notebooks, I figured it was just one of his imaginations. I remember hearing about his 2 friends a few more times after that. A few years passed, I was in middle school and my brother was in high school. On our way back from visiting my father's parents, they lived in a farmhouse out in the countryside, my brother sitting beside me in the back seat whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Grandpa doesn't have much time left." My father's family were farmers and Grandpa was strong and full of life. He had never been sick a day in his life. He ate well, drank a lot, and was more energetic than anyone else. The thought of him dying soon was absurd. Me. "What do you mean? He looks perfectly fine." Brother. "You'll understand soon enough. Grandpa doesn't have any color left." Me. "No color? What do you mean by that?" He didn't answer, just turned his face toward the window, his expression unreadable. By then, I had already realized that my brother might have what people call a sixth sense. I figured those two friends from his childhood were probably spirits. He would often get nauseous or feel chills whenever he went to places where accidents or tragedies had happened. So when he said he doesn't have much time, I felt something indescribable, a chill that crawled up my spine. I couldn't sleep that night. A few days later, Grandpa was diagnosed with liver cancer. It was stage 2, but his liver was strong and there was no metastasis. He underwent surgery and began chemotherapy. Since his life wasn't in danger, the family relaxed and visited him often at the hospital. Everyone except my brother. He went with us on the day of the surgery, but as soon as Grandpa was wheeled out of the operating room, he turned pale and said he felt sick. After that, he never visited again. No matter how much our parents asked or scolded him, he wouldn't say a word about Grandpa. Eventually, they stopped asking. "10 days after the surgery, just when everyone thought Grandpa was recovering, he passed away suddenly, not from cancer, but from a heart attack. When I heard the news, I thought, so my brother knew. My brother, who usually disliked most people, had always liked Grandpa. At the funeral, he cried silently without making a sound. Even now, as adults in our 40s, that was the only time I've ever seen my brother cry. He once told me, when someone's close to death, their color starts to fade. I can tell when their time is near. When it's truly the end, they turn black and white, like all the color drains away. When Grandpa came out of the operating room, he was completely black and white. It was hard to look at him. Now both my brother and I are in our 40s. That strange ability of his, to see people turn black and white before they die, has faded with time. He says he hardly sees it anymore." All right, well, on that note, boys and girls, we are going to our second music break. On this break, we have Mr. Hosni Bronx, who hails originally from Jamaica, but also the Bronx of New York. He's going to be singing Free Child and Strong Life. And King Cinnamon from Biafra, Nigeria, will be singing Rosie. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
Who decided this Rocky on the beat.
Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Cinnamon, cinnamon, do it softly. I said you wine your body, eat the sweetie, sweetie. Make it rock my body, I am feeling horny. Make it touch my body, I am feeling sweetie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. All my men, they wear out. All my guys, they wear out. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. All my men, they wear out. All my guys, they wear out. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Muko mukeji, go bere muketa. Oya muko mukeji, oya bere muketa. Daddy mu ekon, omo ni kwa mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, omo ni fumi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi, omo ni ejo. Daddy saucy, omo ni ejo. Daddy kosi, omo ni ejo. Daddy turn him pussy, omo ni ejo. Daddy and his baby, them there for corner. Daddy begin the touch, and the girl the holla. Now daddy begin the open the shirt collar. Now something come up, daddy begin the suck up. Daddy mu ekon, omo ni kwa mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, omo ni fumi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi, omo ni ejo. Daddy saucy, omo ni ejo. All my men they wear out. All my guys they wear out. Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Rosie. All my men they wear out. All my guys they wear out. Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Rosie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Cinnamon, do it softly. I see the wine your body, eat the sweetie. Shake it rock my body, I am feeling horny. Shake it touch my body, I am feeling sweetie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you talk me, you got me confused. Kissy, amani, ejo. Daddy saucy, amani, ejo. Daddy kosi, amani, ejo. Daddy kahe pussy, amani, ejo. Daddy contact, amani, ejo. Daddy comfort, daddy consist, amani, ejo. Daddy can't eat, daddy 120, amani, ejo. Daddy 18, daddy 240, amani, ejo. Daddy 360. Daddy and the baby, them there for corner. Okay, begin the touch and the girl the holla. Okay, daddy begin the open the shirt collar. I come to come, daddy begin the sucker. Daddy move, echo, amani kwe mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, amani fumi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi, amani ejo. Daddy saucy, amani ejo. All my men they wear out. All my guys they wear out. Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Rosie.
Oh yeah, it's Rocky on the beat.
Babylon to make you suffer. Babylon to make you suffer. Babylon to make you suffer. what the desire, young life. We are ready to fight. Hard life for my people. I don't know why my people live this life. I don't know why my people live this life. I don't know how to fight, 'cause my people suffer. What do you want, Babylon? I don't understand why this world is so strange, strange with my people. I don't know how to fight, but if we are together, it will work. It will work. Babylon no have no heart. 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 My people, you have to survive. Yeah, you must rebuild you and make your own way. You must not give up. The beginning of the revolt will start. We need to follow our true destiny. Whoa, whoa, yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know why my people live this life. I don't know why my people live this life. The obstacle we face, yeah, is Babylon. The world is a good place, yeah, for our freedom. You take everything, you don't breathe anything, yeah, yeah. Young life, all anti-dread. We must believe in a magical, powerful force that unite us, and not just these people stay speechless again. We don't want to talk, no, it's time to fight, yeah. We start talking. Babylon make you suffer. 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 What the desire, young life. We are ready to fight.
Welcome back, and thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Our next Reddit ghost story is from user Luk, LUK_AGS, AGZ. I have a guardian demon? This happened to me a few months ago, but until now I hadn't had courage to tell it. I've always thought that you only see if you believe, and after this, honestly, I don't want to see it again. It all started one Friday afternoon while watching Bona Girl podcast. Suddenly everything around me became cold and inert, as if life had been sucked away. The video paused by itself, the screen went black, and the feeling was very disturbing. I finished the episode and went to the square with my friends to clear my head. That night, when I went to bed, that feeling came back. My bed became stiff, my blanket rough, and my pillows hard as stone. It took me a long time to fall asleep. I'm a heavy sleeper, but that night I woke up. When I opened my eyes, everything was in black and white. Like an old movie, I couldn't move my body, only my eyes and head. On the metal beam of the ceiling, I saw a black, shapeless figure resembling a gargoyle, with red eyes that glowed like flames. I thought it was sleep paralysis and tried to ignore it. The figure looked at me for a long time, then I woke up with a start. It was 3:03 a.m. The second day went by normally, although I felt more dull. At night, my dog was barking at a specific spot on the wall in front of my bed. That night, I woke up again in black and white, paralyzed and scared. Focusing my eyes, I saw the silhouette of a black man with red eyes. He raised his hand towards me, and I woke up. It was 3:03 a.m. again. On the third day, he was more depressed. I slept almost all day. At night, I woke up paralyzed, but this time my vision was normal. The air was very cold and heavy. I blinked, and a man appeared in his mid-20s. 6'3", dark brown hair like mine, pale skin, bright red eyes. He was dressed in black with an elegant trench coat. He didn't scare me. He seemed familiar, even friendly. He walked around my bed and stood next to me, but not too close. Then he spoke. "Do you know me?" he asked with a hoarse and cold voice. "Yes," I answered, although my mouth moved on its own without me wanting it. "Perfect," he said. Afterwards we talked, but I don't remember what. I only remember the farewell. "Well, that's what we're left with. That's our pact," he said, without expression. "Yes," I answered. "Until next time," he said as he walked toward the door. Before taking the handle, he turned, waved his hand, and smiled at me. As soon as he knocked on the door, I woke up, this time calm. It was 3:03 a.m. Something like this never happened to me again, but since then I feel like I'm not alone. In dark places, I feel like someone is watching me. And the strangest thing, something happens to people who hurt me, make fun of me, or insult me. They get sick, injured, or punished, even to my friends for joking. It seems I have a guardian demon. Besides this, I have only told him once, and it was to my closest friends, since we were talking about our normal events, and that same night he appeared again in the distance on a lamppost. I described the scene. A cold breeze hit me on the neck, and I looked in the direction I was coming from. In the distance, there was only a street light on with a person who I knew very well. That was what was supposed to have appeared to me, staring at me with those red eyes characteristic of him. He greeted me kindly, waving his hand, blinked at the streetlight, and disappeared. While I was writing this, I felt the same sensation as the first time, cold air, although the temperature was 36 degrees Celsius, and the feeling that someone was looking at the screen with me. I would like to know your opinions on why this happened to me and what that entity was. Thanks for reading me. I don't have any comments for that one. This ghost story is from Sunstone Smile. Something strange happened one night at a hostel in Indonesia. I don't know if anyone will believe this, but it really happened to me a couple of months back when I was backpacking in Indonesia. I was staying at this small old hostel in a quiet coastal town. I won't say the name, but it used to be part of an old Dutch area. The place looked nice online, but in person it felt kind of forgotten. There were only a few rooms, and that night I was the only guest. The back of the hostel had an old locked gate that led to a small cemetery and what looked like the remains of a Dutch church. The owner mentioned it once and laughed, but something about it didn't feel right. That night I couldn't sleep. The place was too quiet and I could hear every sound. Around midnight I started hearing footsteps on the wooden terrace outside my room. Slow, heavy ones. It didn't sound like someone just passing by. It was more like whoever it was kept walking back and forth. The boards creaked with each step, and then it stopped right in front of my window. I just froze. I was sure someone was standing out there. I didn't move or make a sound. For a few seconds I heard what I swear sounded like breathing. Not loud, but close. My window curtain was thin, and I could see a faint shadow through it. It looked tall, taller than a normal person. I wanted to call out, but my voice wouldn't come out. After what felt like forever, the steps started again, slowly moving away down the terrace until everything went quiet. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat up and waited for the sun. In the morning, when I stepped outside, the dust on the terrace had marks on it from in front of my room, like someone had walked there during the night. When I told the owner what I heard, he just gave me a weird smile and said, "You're not the first." I left that morning and didn't look back. Even now I still remember those footsteps. Slow, heavy, and too close. This ghost story is by OKBeat3031. I had a dream about an old fling and found out he passed away. I'm a 43-year-old woman, and when I was about 19 or 20, I met this guy. Let's call him Jay. We were more like friends with benefits, but I definitely liked him more than he liked me. He was loud, a little obnoxious, and kind of hard to deal with at times. Still, I liked him. Once I turned 21, we went our separate ways. You know how it is. Newly 21, living near a big city, going out with friends, clubbing, meeting new people. I lost touch with Jay completely. From what I remember, he tried to reach out a few times, but I brushed him off. Fast forward about 5 or 6 years later, I had this really vivid dream about him. In the dream, I was in a parking garage and Jay was chasing after me, trying to get my attention. I remember turning around and yelling, "No, I didn't like how you treated me." Then I ran off. When I woke up, it stuck with me. The dream felt too real, like it meant something. I couldn't shake the feeling, so I decided to look him up. I couldn't find much about him online, so I searched for his mom. She was easier to find since she was a real estate agent, and we happened to share the same last name. I found her number and actually called. When she answered, I said, "Hi, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to know your son Jay. I'm calling because I had a dream about him. How's he doing?" There was a long pause, and then she told me that Jay had passed away. He died in July of 2005, and I'd had that dream around October of 2005 or maybe 2006. Apparently, he'd been born with a heart condition and passed away in his car on the side of the road after feeling unwell. I was speechless. I remember just sitting there after that call, completely stunned. I couldn't believe it. It still gives me chills thinking about it because in that dream he was trying so hard to get my attention, and it happened after he had already passed. Part of me truly believes that that was his way of reaching out, maybe to say goodbye or make peace. I just wish I could have seen him one more time. Yeah, and it sucks that the one time you did see him, you yelled at him. Dang it. This ghost story is by Nancy Says No. That's with 5 O's. The night I came face to face with an elemental being. There's this park in Perth, Washington that people used to wander about or just chill after clubbing or to escape the hot, steamy night air. The place was a massive beat. If you know, you know, but I'm here to talk about something else. Sometimes I'd meet friends there, or sometimes I'd sit by one of the 2 lakes and watch turtles and frogs. It was kind of an unofficially social place, too, and you never know who you might meet by the lakes or wandering around the wooded paths. This night I was alone. It was a strange night even for this place, where strange things were often spoken about. In fact, this story is only one of many accounts I might write about another time. This was the late 80s, early 90s. A lot of people were experimenting with different spiritual insights and practices, like Wicca and earth magic. Not that long ago, by writing about those days, now I wonder what happened to all those magical youths. Magical. We were that, and for myself at that time only 21, magic represented a brave new world with endless possibilities. So this night I was alone, and having just gotten off the grass, I started walking up one of my favorite paths. There was knee-high fog I'd never seen before blanketing the whole park. Grass, water, and the paths. Each path was lined by subtropical or exotic trees. Pink peppercorn vines and paperbacks along the trail I'd taken were a few of the many Moreton Bay fig trees with roots big enough to sleep in if one was inclined. It was still. Hot summer air with no breeze and trees reaching up as if from a misty lake with roots submerged that appeared to be floating in clouds. Something else about that fog or mist or whatever it's called was that I stopped abruptly at the edges of the park. It didn't spill onto the footpaths or little streets, but stopped sharply at the lights of inner-city Perth. There was a silence, too. Every so often I'd pass a frog or turtle sitting perfectly still, as if even the wildlife felt like they might see something surprising. This was my nighttime playground, and even with the strange weather conditions, there were branches and irregularities in the shape of the land itself that I was familiar with, yet this night, as I approached each tree along that path, I felt that there was something unfamiliar in the twisted roots, like huge veins and arteries, and I couldn't be sure if it was this low flat cloud imitating movement with its eddies and steerings, and I told myself how impossible this was. The ancient wood itself was growing or shifting just out of my peripheral sight, but still. I almost forgot to mention the moon that night. It was brand new and bright. The park and its lakes and trees were all lit by bright moonlight. About halfway to the top of my trail, I started a little bit. I stopped and blinked, shifted my head, and squinted as I approached a figure lying still and out of place between 2 huge Moreton Bay fig roots. I told myself how normal it is to see familiar shapes like nature imitating something living, but that was all it was. An accidental imitation of a shape that looked in the fog under moonlight among the branches and roots like something familiar. As I got closer, I started to feel less confident in my previous conclusion. The shape was too human. It had a head and torso, but somehow something didn't make sense. It was a puzzle I couldn't quite solve except to move closer and see. I started to think that this may have been a person in danger or distress, and my brain tried to make sense. I thought maybe I was sure now I was looking at a man, might have been beaten by police or thugs, as both had happened to others in this place and time. Still, my concern felt uneasy. It seemed that his hands, which I'd thought were holding on to the knotted wood, like he was reaching out for the comfort of something solid. Only my eyes couldn't find the points where his hands touched and the wood ended. Again, I thought I was looking at an accidental image. Pareidolia. I bent down at the knees. I wanted to understand what I was seeing, and I wanted it to make sense. In a moment, I realized his head was down but facing in my direction. I tried to take in exactly what he was, and that's when he looked up at me. Our eyes met. At first, there was surprise or even shock reflected in both our faces. At first, I felt no fear. I guess it's a precursor to fight or flight. In a night already odd for its stillness, time stood still, and I took in exactly what I was seeing. He was male, I was sure. He was not human, though. He had a glistening appearance, not like he was wet, but as if he was made of some glistening substance that leaves sometimes show. He was not separate from the tree, I guess. His eyes were beautiful almond-shaped eyes like a cat or a lizard, and yellow like a cat. His face wasn't scary. He looked kind, actually. Kind, but also sad. Very sad. Then something primal kicked in. All these years later, I wonder if it was right what I did. Could I have helped? Was I supposed to? Was I being calmed before an attack, and did my being understand that I was in danger? Or was it just stupid human panic that made me run? I ran. I wish I had more to tell you. My conclusion is that he was just one of the life forms also sharing our planet. That our human race is oblivious to what exactly surrounds us. Stories told by ancients and shared around fires and hearths. Have we forgotten who else is here? Why, and for that matter, how? How do we forget elementals and sprites? Magical beings and entities spoken of quite literally by Aboriginal peoples at meetings as Polynesians tribes danced and sang their histories. Our world is magical. What does it mean that we forgot? This ghost story is by Being Visited by a Ghost in My Dream. Wide-lengthiness-299. When I was 22, female, I was dating a 22 male called Adam, fake name. Adam and myself met in college and had reconnected after I had dropped out of school. During school, he had walked me home from college to our shared dorm for months. We had a will, they won't, they kind of thing, but it never really ended up happening at that time for whatever reason. After reconnecting, we officially started dating at 21 and moved in together after roughly 6 months. It was a really healthy and happy relationship with lots of trust and communication. After a couple months of dating, I had a really strange dream. I had dreamed I was in a Chuck E. Cheese type place next to the skee-ball machines. I spent the entire dream talking to a man around my own age, in skater shorts, black, skate shoes, black, and a bright red skater shirt. I don't remember what we talked about, but when I woke up, I was overcome with this feeling of complete joy. This dream had really stuck out as weird because I never have happy dreams, and I also had never woken up feeling such positive emotions. I turned to Adam and told him all about this weird dream, my feelings, and the guy I had been talking to. I described his clothes and his look. Adam listened and just thought it was weird and cool. I kind of let it go after that and moved on with life. Fast forward to 6 months later, about a year and a half into dating, Adam and myself had a very emotional heart-to-heart. He opened up about his best friend, we'll call him Easton, from childhood dying traumatically while we were in college. He told me it was the anniversary and he was having a hard time processing Easton's death. Easton had been bombing a giant hill in San Francisco on his skateboard. I guess he was at a pro level, so this wasn't too outrageous, when a car blew through a stop sign at the bottom of this hill, causing Easton to collide violently into the car at a crazy speed. Easton went to the hospital and they gave him the all clear besides a broken arm. Easton's family then came to collect him so he could heal, but in the middle of his family dropped dead. Apparently, the hospital hadn't checked him for internal bleeding, and he had more damage than they were told. This death sent shockwaves through their family and friends. Adam didn't go to the funeral because he couldn't cope with the loss, so he felt he couldn't let go and grieve properly. Through tears, he asked me if I wanted to see a picture of his friend Easton, and I said absolutely. He pulls out the picture of him and a group of his childhood friends. Then he pointed to Easton, and I screamed. It was the boy from my dream. He was wearing the exact same outfit I had described. I had never seen this kid before, or the photo, and that was him. Adam asked me why I was so freaked out, and I explained he was the kid from my dream that I told him about. That's when it all started to make sense. Both myself and Adam were spiritual, not religious, and I'd always been more sensitive and intuitive. We discussed this realization, and I expressed I think his friend must have visited me to tell me he was in a good place and happy. I don't think Adam was open enough to receiving this message due to grief. That joy didn't feel like my own at the time, which I had said, and I genuinely think his friend Easton wanted to move on knowing Adam knew he was happy now. After this, Adam did start to process his grief, and he was really happy to know his friend was happier where he was now. It was such a strange experience at the time and stuck with me all these years. That's a pretty cool experience, I would say. I believe that people in our lives that have passed come back to us in the dream realm because it's easiest to manifest and easiest to speak or communicate. It's pretty cool that she had this experience, and it's pretty weird that my phone's not letting me get out of this story. That is so odd. What the hell? And for me, it's like a minute till midnight. That's not creepy at all. I'm just going to close it out and reopen it. This is by Elfrina_Green. My ghost stories. Haunted church and a wedding. So where I live, there is a town, yes, a whole town, that is on the National Registry of Historic Places. In this town, which was established in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, there is a church. Because of course there is. This church is stunning. Hell, the whole town is gorgeous. All of the original buildings still stand, and the people who live in them must keep them authentic. At least on the outside, but I'm getting off course. Now, as I said, this church is entirely original, which, given that it is made of wood, is amazing. Let's be honest, saltwater-related and saltwater-related weather wreaks havoc on wood. However, the exterior is in pristine condition, and like the exterior, the interior is also all original. Now, the first time that I saw this church, I was in awe. I will admit to being a bit trepidatious about setting foot in it, but due to my being a pagan witch is why. However, walking in for the first time was wholly breathtaking. No, I don't believe that the church is unconsecrated. They still hold services there on Sundays. Walking in for the first time, I thought that I would be bombarded by angry spirits trying to push me out. That, however, was not the case. Sure, there was plenty of spirits, and most of them were not happy that a witch was setting foot into their church. I can really say that I blame them. Now the entire town is haunted, but the church, let's just say that I wasn't expecting there to be that many spirits there. After leaving that first time, I didn't expect to really ever go back, mostly because I didn't want to upset the spirits of the church. Unfortunately for me, this past Monday, my brother-in-law got married in said church. Out of respect for the spirits, I remained outside as long as the rain permitted. Eventually, I had to go inside for the ceremony. To my surprise, the spirits of the church were more than happy to have me and everyone else there. They sat among us in the pews and were nothing but kind. Overall, it was a lovely ceremony, even though some of the lady spirits were scandalizing by the bridesmaids' dresses. I have to preface this next part with a very sad short story. My husband's aunt recently lost her husband to cancer and has not been doing well. Not that I could blame her. I don't know what I would do if I lost my husband. That being said, even though they invited her, none of us expected her to show up. Well, okay, I knew she would be there because even though she doesn't like me, she would never miss one of her nephews getting married. Mostly because she was never able to have children of her own. So again, I can't fault her for wanting to be there on her youngest nephew's big day. To be honest, it was nice to see her, no matter how much she dislikes me. This was about her nephew and not me, and no, I don't know how she feels about my new sister-in-law. Anyway, I was not surprised to see her husband there to support his wife and watch his nephew get married. What I didn't expect was for her to allow me to comfort her when she started crying. I am normally a fairly decent person, but I will admit that I can be abrasive at times. Okay, most of the time. I don't like people in general, so sue me. After the ceremony, and before we all left church, I did encounter someone whom I didn't expect. One of the original pastors of the church. As previously stated, there are a lot of ghosts in this church, but I have never encountered one of the pastors before. However, as everyone was leaving and the minister who did the ceremony had left, I happened to look back up at the arch pulpit. Standing there in all his pastoral regalia was one of the original pastors. He was standing there where the minister who performed the wedding had been standing, glaring at the spot. He looked up at me and smiled. "Thank heavens that awful man is gone," he whispered as he appeared next to me. "I despise men who require money to marry two people so obviously in love," he sighed. "Besides, he was rude and annoying." I looked at him confused as to why he was approaching me, the witch. He smiled and patted me on the arm. "Not all who walk these pews approve of one such as yourself, but I have watched you since you first came to my church. You are respectful of the religious significance of this place, as well as its history. I trust you more than I trust half of my congregation." "Being dead has taught this old man a thing or two," he said, grinning. "You, my dear, are welcome here whenever you like. Perhaps you can help me convince a parishioner or two to move on." And with that, he just moved away, as if nothing significant had just happened. I stood there dumbfounded for a long moment, soaking in what had just happened. I have permission from a ghost to come help some of his congregation move on. I mean, sure, I've had people living ask me to help people move on. This was a ghost, though. It's a new one for me. I'm not sure what to do with it. I might go back, I might not. we'll just have to wait and see. This one is by Melissa Co. 12. 52 Jalan Bahagia HBD Terrace House. This story happened when I slept over at my friend's place at Jalan Bahagia BLK 52, which is a landed HDB terrace. The story goes like this. I went over to my friend's place as how I would usually most of the weekends. At this point of time, my childhood friend's first elder sis was about to give birth on that very day. Due to that, she was hospitalized. I recall she gave birth quite late. Approximately late evening, she gave birth to a baby boy. Since they are Muslim, according to their belief, upon giving birth, they have to bury the umbilical cord, but since it was already past evening turning night, the husband decided to bury it the very next day. So kept it in a jar and brought it to over at my friend's place and stored it in the refrigerator and went off. Before he left, I remember he told my friend's mom that he would drop by in the morning to collect the umbilical cord. As the night falls, everyone in the house went to bed. We were told to keep all the windows shut by my friend's mom. Me and my friend were sleeping in the hall watching a movie. Around 2:30 a.m., I was awoken by a sound. I woke up and looked around, but nothing strange caught my eye. I lied down and tried to catch my sleep. I was awakened by the sound seconds later after I lied down. This time my friend heard it too. He thought I was playing some prank or something. After I swore upon the God, he was convinced that it wasn't me. The sound was like as if something was scratching against something. The sound began to be continuous. Then out of nowhere we heard banging against the window. I was freaked out. The sound was quite loud that even my friend's second and third elder sister came out running as they heard their window being banged as well. They were terrified to an extent whereby the second elder sister began to cry out of fear. Every one of us literally gathered in the hall. Soon it got worse, as we even started to hear something crying and laughing. My friend's father quickly on the hi-fi system and played the Muslim prayers. We all started to pray. As we prayed, the crying and laughter got louder. But we still continued to pray. Eventually, all the loud banging, scratching, crying, and laughter came to a halt. Later then, I did realize why we were told to keep all the windows closed. I was told by my friend's father that those things which we encountered was known as kak-kak, Pontianak. Those things love blood, and they knew that in the refrigerator there was the umbilical cord kept, and it contains blood. Till this very day, I'm still traumatized by that incident. This is by Obvious Wombat 623. My Polite Poltergeist Story. This is my one and only first-hand experience with what I can only describe as a poltergeist. This happened in the late 90s. I was young, 21, and living with my boyfriend at the time. Neither of us made a lot of money, so we got a cheap apartment in the gray area between the good part of town and the bad part. I worked days, he worked nights. I came home from work one day, said goodbye to my boyfriend as he headed to work, changed, and then went grocery shopping. When I came back home, I walked into chaos. A few things hit me right away. Every single light was on and the stereo was up as loud as it would go, tuned to some talk radio station. I knew I had turned off the lights when I left for the store, because it was habit to keep the power bill affordable. Not only was the stereo not on when I left, nor did I have it on before I left the station. It was turned to was nothing that either my boyfriend or I would listen to. It was one of those stereos with station presets and press buttons to tune it. The station was nowhere near the one of the presets, so it wasn't like it was bad reception that was causing it to fade into a neighboring station. Those who know, know. As I walked through the apartment to go turn off the stereo, I noticed the cat was somewhere in sight. After turning off the stereo, I went looking for her. I noticed that every sink was completely full to the brim, but the faucets were off. All the hairs on my arms and back of my neck were standing up. I finally heard the cat meow and found her in the top cabinet of the in-wall pantry. There's absolutely no way she could have gotten in there on her own. The door was above my head, and it was a door with a small groove on the side that you used to open it, no handles or knobs. There was nothing nearby, no table, no counter, no ledge that the cat could have used to even jump up in there, let alone open the door on her own. I freaked out and called my boyfriend. He listened to me babble about what had happened and stayed on the phone with me while I did a tour of the apartment to make sure no one had broken in and was hiding in a closet or something. Nobody there. He had me confirm that nothing was missing, so we decided it wasn't a robbery or a break-in. As I was still pretty freaked and on the verge of hyperventilating, he called the front desk of the apartment complex to see if there had been any issues around our apartment, to see if maybe someone started to break in and ran off before they finished or something. Turns out there had been an altercation at the apartment next door to us. We had long suspected that our neighbors were dealing drugs and thought maybe it was related to that. They said security had to escort some very angry men away, but that nothing had happened to our apartment directly. As I walked through the apartment to go turn off the stereo, I noticed the cat was nowhere in sight. After turning off the stereo, I went looking for her. I noticed that every sink was completely full to the brim and the faucets were off. All the hairs on my arms and back of my neck were standing up. I finally heard the cat meow and I found her in the top cabinet of the in-wall pantry. There's absolutely no way she could have gotten in there on her own. The door was above my head, and it was a door with a small groove on the side that you used to open it. I freaked out and called my boyfriend. He listened to me babble about what had happened. Sorry guys, I'm repeating some stuff. And stayed on the phone with me while I did a tour of the apartment. Boyfriend said jokingly that it must have been a ghost trying to make it look like someone was home by turning on the lights and putting the stereo on a talk station, so that the altercation next door didn't end with one of the guys trying to break in and steal our things. He then said something like the ghost had better do some housework to pay for the higher utility bills we're going to get, and said we'd talk about it the next day when we were both off of work. He didn't want to talk about it much in the apartment, but when we left to go for a walk, he said he wasn't sure if it was a ghost, but if it was, he believed that the last thing he wanted to do was get scared. By treating it lightly, he felt like it wouldn't feed the ghost fear, since it hadn't done anything destructive and the worst thing it had done was put the cat in the cabinet. We should just let it be. A few days later, I got a call at work from him where it was his turn to sound a little freaked out. He asked if I had vacuumed and put the dishes away before I left for work. I told him no, and he said he came back from an errand to find the entire apartment completely vacuumed, perfect lines, but no footprints leading to the closet the vacuum was stored in. Also, all the dishes were put away in the proper places. He said that maybe the ghost heard his joke about doing housework and took it seriously. Well, if that's the case, can I borrow your poltergeist? Can I borrow your nice poltergeist? Because I could really use some help around here. else really happened after that, though the cat was obsessed with sitting on the edge of the tub and staring into it from that point on. Something she had never done before. My own guess was that our polite poltergeist was a former resident who maybe died in the bathtub and who was trying to protect their apartment from potential threat. Who knows? Oh my goodness. Oh, I see what's going on. This story may be short enough. Jen's Midnight Cafe. Don't step on the offerings. So this happened to my friend Fawn during a trip to Bali, Indonesia, with her international friends. Most people in Bali are Hindu, and it's common to see small offerings placed on the ground. There are these little woven trays filled with flowers, rice, or food. I think they're called kanang sari and are meant to honor the spirits. One afternoon, as Fawn and her group were walking to dinner, her friend Sam accidentally stepped on one of the offerings. Fawn, being Thai, knew this was a big deal. He told Sam to apologize, but her Western friends just laughed it off. Sam shrugged, saying, "It's just trash on the floor." Fawn then apologized to the spirits out loud, hoping they'd forgive the ignorance. That night they went out drinking. Everyone was tipsy and they left the restaurant. Fawn's boyfriend, who was also drunk, stepped on another offering. The others teased him, saying, "Ooh, be careful, a ghost would come for him." Fawn was already uncomfortable and told him to stop, but he only made it worse. "Oh, these are for ghosts," he said, laughing. "Then let them come," he started, stomping on every offering he saw. The group thought it was hilarious, but Fawn was terrified. Again she whispered an apology into the night. Later they all returned to their villa, everyone showered and went to bed. Fawn fell asleep quickly but woke up to a strange scratching sound. When she turned on her lamp, her boyfriend was gone. She noticed that the constant scratching came from the wardrobe. She opened it and froze. Her boyfriend, a 6'1" man, was crammed inside, his neck tilted at a painful angle, scraping at the wooden walls with his nails. His eyes were shut tight, like he was still asleep. Fawn shook him awake, shouting his name. He gasped, eyes wide, and then, bro wet himself. Completely confused, he said he'd been dreaming about a woman with no eyes chasing him, but he had no idea how he ended up in the wardrobe. Fawn helped him to the bathroom and told him they'd talk about it in the morning. Well, dang it, guys. It is the end of story time with me, TessaTNT, tonight. Thank you so much once again for hanging out with me on the airwaves. I hope you enjoyed the stories as much as I did. I was thinking about reading the book Food to Die For because it has really good ghost stories, but it also has recipes. But Amy Bruni is the one who wrote that, and I think it's a little too soon to be reading a brand new book on air without getting her permission, so Reddit Ghost Stories it was. Thank you to all my friends out there, wherever you may be listening, Beyond the Omniverse tonight. I had a wonderful time, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow night when we are going to be doing trippy TikToks with me, TessaTNT. I'm hoping you guys like that. Next weekend, we're going to have Psychic Chris Garcia in to do free psychic readings, so make sure you check out the live YouTube and get the info to call in for that. Because free readings are priceless. Don't forget, you guys, we are all in this together. Together, we can make the world a bit better, and together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and take care of my yous. Happy dreams. Happy day if you're not sleeping.